The diplomatic vessel, Star Seeker, drifted silently into orbit around the uncharted planet, its sensors buzzing with activity as they scanned the surface below. The ship was sleek and elegant, a marvel of Galactic Alliance engineering with its curved, opalescent hull that seemed to shift colors depending on how the nearest star's light struck it. Standing before the main viewport, Dr. Tejas Ven watched with professional detachment as the planet came into view. The Xerath scientist's four eyes narrowed slightly, all focusing on different aspects of the world below. Two tracked the swirling storm systems. One monitored the readouts appearing on the holographic display beside him, and the last one remained fixed on the peculiar landmasses that seemed to defy conventional planetary formation theories. Initial scans complete, Dr. Ven announced Lyra, the ship's Feluvian navigator. Her translucent blue skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that indicated intense concentration. You want to take a look at these readings. They're unusual. Tejas turned from the viewport, his tall, thin frame moving with the fluid grace typical of the Xerath species. His skin, a pale lavender hue with faint silver markings, seemed to shimmer under the ship's ambient lighting. "Define unusual, Navigator Lyra," he requested, his voice carrying the melodic chur that characterized Xerath speech when translated. Lyra's fingers danced across the control panel, bringing up a three-dimensional projection of the planet. The atmospheric composition is highly volatile. Oxygen levels at 21%. That's within habitable parameters, interrupted Tejas. Yes, but combined with the nitrogen ratio and trace elements, it creates a highly combustible environment. And that's just the beginning. Lyra expanded the hologram to display more data. The gravitational pull is at 1.03 standard, slightly higher than optimal. Radiation levels from the star and natural elements exceed safety protocols by 15%. Temperature variations range from -60 to +50 degrees Celsius, depending on region and season. And the biological diversity. She paused, her bioluminescence flickering with what might be interpreted as concern. The biological diversity prompted Tejas. It's off the charts. Preliminary scans detect over 10 million distinct species, many of which appear to be what we would classify as apex predators. The microbial concentration in the atmosphere and surface water bodies is concerning. Tejas absorbed this information, his secondary brain processing the data while his primary consciousness considered the implications. As the Alliance's foremost expert on extreme environment classification, he had visited over 300 worlds, but something about this one felt different. The combination of factors was rare, perhaps unique. "What's the preliminary classification?" he asked, though he already had a theory forming. Lyra hesitated before answering. Based on initial scans, the computer suggests a Class 12 Deathworld. A ripple of surprise passed through Tejas' body. Class 12 was exceptionally high. Only 3 other planets in the explored galaxy had earned such a classification. "Show me the biodiversity mapping again," he requested, moving closer to the hologram. As Lyra complied, the doors to the bridge slid open, admitting Captain Zorvu, the Tellurian commander of the Star Seeker. Standing nearly 2 meters tall with rocky, crystalline skin and eyes that glowed like molten gold, Zorvu was an imposing figure even among the diverse crew. "I heard we found ourselves something interesting," the captain rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. "Indeed, Captain," replied Tejas. "This planet exhibits extreme characteristics across multiple metrics. It's a Class 12 death world according to preliminary scans." Zorva grunted, a sound like small avalanches. "And yet, I'm detecting energy signatures. Artificial ones." This caught Tejas off guard. His 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of surprise among his kind. "That's not possible. No spacefaring civilization would establish a colony on a Class 12 world. The resource expenditure for protective measures would be astronomical." "See for yourself," said Zorvu, gesturing to a secondary display. Tejas studied the readouts, his scientific mind racing. The signatures were unmistakable, evidence of rudimentary but definitely artificial power generation. More concerning were the scattered readings suggesting large-scale agriculture and what might be population centers. We need to investigate further, Tejas decided, his professional curiosity overriding his usual caution. I request permission to lead a ground survey team. Captain Zorvu considered this for a moment, his crystalline features unreadable. Granted, but with full containment protocols. Whatever's down there has survived in conditions that would kill most known species. We should assume extreme danger until proven otherwise. Of course, Captain, agreed Tejas, already mentally preparing the survey parameters. We'll take the shuttle down at dawn. As the survey team prepared for descent, Tejas reviewed the more detailed scans that had come in overnight. What he saw only deepened the mystery. The planet's ecosystems were in a constant state of violent flux. Predator and prey relationships more complex than any he'd studied before. Weather systems that could form and dissipate with frightening speed and intensity. Tectonic activity that suggested the entire planetary crust was in ongoing upheaval. And yet, amid all this chaos, the signs of artificial presence persisted. In fact, they seemed to have adapted to these conditions rather than attempting to control them, an unusual approach for any advanced civilization. Final preparations complete, Dr. Venn, reported Kraz, the team's security officer. The Dverger was compact and heavily muscled, his gray skin covered in intricate tattoos that denoted his military rank and achievements. The shuttle is ready for launch. Tejas nodded, closing the holographic display. Thank you, Officer Kraz. Let's proceed. The survey team consisted of 5 members. Tejas as lead scientist, Kraz for security, Marin, a Loxith biologist specializing in extreme adaptations, Jalil, an evosion technology expert, and Noor, a Turellian cultural anthropologist, included on the off chance they encountered sentient life. As they boarded the shuttle, Tejas couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something unprecedented. Little did he know just how right he was. The descent to the planet's surface was turbulent. Atmospheric currents buffeted the shuttle like a child's toy, and twice the shields had to deflect lightning strikes of unusual intensity. This storm wasn't visible from orbit, Jalil observed, her feathered crest flattening against her skull in concern. It formed within the last hour, confirmed Tejas, monitoring the instruments. The meteorological dynamics on this world are accelerated. When they finally broke through the cloud cover, the landscape below stole everyone's breath. Even Kraz seemed momentarily stunned. Vast forests stretched in all directions, interspersed with glittering rivers and lakes. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks disappearing back into the clouds. The colors were vibrant, almost painfully so, with vegetation displaying shades of green that seemed impossibly rich. It's beautiful, whispered Noor, her empathic tendrils quivering with emotion. Beauty is often the most effective lure, muttered Kraz, running a final check on his defensive equipment. Tejas remained silent, focused on finding a suitable landing site. Eventually, he identified a clearing near what appeared to be one of the artificial energy signatures. As the shuttle settled onto the ground, the team completed their final containment preparations. Each member donned an environmental suit designed to protect against biological, chemical, and radiological threats. The suits were state-of-the-art, utilizing force field technology to create a barrier between the wearer and the environment without impeding movement or sensory input. Remember, Tejas cautioned as they prepared to disembark, this planet has been classified as a Class F, 12 Deathworld. Assume everything is dangerous until proven otherwise. No direct contact with any substance. No removal of protective gear under any circumstances. The team acknowledged his instructions with solemn nods. Then, with a soft hiss, the shuttle door opened, and they stepped onto the surface of the uncharted world. The first thing that struck Tejas was the gravity, slightly heavier than the ship's artificial standard, but noticeable. The second was the sound, a cacophony of noises coming from the forest edge. Calls, cries, rustling, buzzing, evidence of teeming life in every direction. Dr. Venn called Marin, her voice tense. "You need to see this." Tejas moved to where the biologist stood, scanning the ground with her instruments. What he saw caused all four of his eyes to widen in alarm. "The microbial density in the soil is beyond anything in our database," Marin explained, her voice hushed despite the protection of their suits. "There are more microorganisms in a handful of this dirt than on entire planets we've studied." Before Tejas could respond, Jalil called out from near the forest edge. "I've identified the source of the energy signature. It's coming from beyond those trees, approximately half a kilometer in that direction." "Let's proceed with caution," decided Tejas. "Cross, take point." Standard survey formation. The team moved through the forest in silent awe. The vegetation was dense and varied, with plants competing fiercely for light and space. Some specimens appeared nearly predatory in nature, with trapping mechanisms or defensive spines. Others displayed symbiotic relationships of stunning complexity. "The adaptational pressure here must be extraordinary," commented Marin as she collected readings. "Everything is either trying to eat, avoid being eaten, or both simultaneously. The atmospheric composition is fluctuating," observed Tejas, watching his instruments. "Oxygen levels are increasing as we move deeper into the vegetation. If it continues, we'll reach combustible levels." "Wonderful," muttered Kraz. "A planet that could spontaneously combust." After 20 minutes of careful progress, they reached another clearing. What they saw there caused the entire team to stop in their tracks. In the center of the clearing stood structures, clearly artificial, clearly constructed with purpose. Low buildings made of locally harvested materials, arranged in a roughly circular pattern. Between and around them were what appeared to be cultivation plots, organized agriculture. "Impossible," whispered Jalil. "No species could develop agriculture on a Class 12 world. The environmental factors alone would prevent crop stability." Yet the evidence was undeniable. Not only was there agriculture, but it was thriving. Plants grew in neat rows, heavy with what were presumably edible portions. "Movement detected," Kraz warned suddenly, his hand moving to his sidearm. From the largest structure, figures emerged, bipedal, of medium height, with minimal external protection despite the hostile environment. They moved with confidence, showing no signs of distress from the conditions that the survey team considered extremely dangerous. "They appear to be indigenous," said Nor in disbelief. "But how? How could any species evolve to withstand these conditions?" Tejas was speechless. According to everything he knew, everything the Alliance had documented across centuries of exploration, this should not be possible. No naturally evolved species could survive unprotected on a Class 12 Deathworld, let alone establish a functioning society. As the indigenous beings noticed the survey team, there was a moment of stillness as both groups observed each other. Tejas expected fear, aggression, or at least caution from the natives. Instead, one of them raised an appendage and made a gesture that seemed almost welcoming. "They're not afraid," Kraz noted with professional concern. "Species that evolve in death environments are invariably aggressive or extremely cautious. This behavior is anomalous." The native that had gestured began moving toward them at a deliberate pace. Now Tejas could see more details. The being had a covering of artificial materials over parts of its body, leaving extremities and head exposed. Its skin appeared soft, with minimal natural protection. It possessed forward-facing eyes, suggesting a predatory, evolutionary history. "Nor," Tejas said quietly, "attempt communication if possible." The anthropologist activated her universal translator and stepped forward slightly, her empathic tendrils extended to maximum sensitivity. The native stopped a respectful distance away and produced vocalizations, complex sound patterns that suggested a developed language. The translator processed for several seconds before producing an approximate translation. "Welcome to our home. We don't get many visitors from the stars." The team exchanged shocked glances within their helmets. Not only were these beings surviving in this environment, they were aware of extraplanetary life and apparently unsurprised by the team's arrival. How is this possible? Tejas murmured to himself. A spacefaring civilization wouldn't choose to settle here, an indigenous evolution in these conditions. He hesitated, then stepped forward. I am Dr. Tejas Van, xenobiologist of the Galactic Alliance Survey Vessel Starseeker. We come in peace and with respect. The native's face contorted in what might have been an expression of pleasure. I'm Tom. We figured someone would find us eventually. Would you folks like some coffee? You look like you've had a long journey. Tejas blinked all four eyes in rapid succession. There was only one possible conclusion, though it defied all his scientific understanding. They had discovered a species that had evolved on a Class 12 Deathworld. The survey team found themselves being led toward the settlement, still struggling to process what they were witnessing. More of the indigenous beings emerged from the structures, varying in size, coloration, and apparent age, but all sharing the same basic bipedal form and curious lack of natural defenses against their environment. Our instruments must be malfunctioning, Tejas said quietly to Marin. This cannot be a Class 12 world if these beings are surviving with such minimal protection. Marin, check her readings again. The instruments are functioning correctly, Dr. Venn. In fact, based on these new biological readings, I would revise the classification upward. This is at minimum a Class 14 Deathworld. That's preposterous, Tejas objected. A Class 14 would be nearly uninhabitable even with our most advanced protective technology. And yet, Marin gestured toward their hosts. Evidence suggests otherwise. They were led to a central area where several of the natives had gathered. Tom, their initial contact, seemed to be explaining the team's presence to the others. There was no sign of fear or aggression. Rather, the natives appeared curious and even excited. An older individual approached them, moving with a peculiar gait. As they drew closer, Tejas was shocked to see that the being was missing one of its lower limbs, replaced with what appeared to be a primitive prosthetic made of local materials. This is our elder Jack, Tom introduced. He's been hoping to meet space travelers his whole life. The elder's face creased in what Tejas was beginning to recognize as an expression of pleasure. Never thought I'd live to see the day, the translator rendered in the team's earpieces. Welcome to Earth, strangers. Earth, repeated Nor. Is that what you call this world? Jack nodded, the gesture apparently universal. Been calling it that as long as we've been here, which is since the beginning for us. You evolved here? Tejas couldn't help asking, his scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. The natives exchanged glances, and several made sounds that the translator identified as expressions of amusement. Where else would we be from? Jack replied, this is humanity's homeworld. The revelation stunned the survey team into silence. These beings, these humans, were claiming to be indigenous to a world that, by all scientific measures, should be impossible to inhabit without extensive genetic engineering or technological protection. Please join us, Tom invited, gesturing toward an arrangement of primitive seating objects. You've come a good time. We're about to have our evening meal. Cross tensed visibly. Dr. Venn, I advise against removing our environmental protection for any reason, including social customs involving consumption. Your friend is smart, Jack commented, settling onto one of the seats with some difficulty due to his prosthetic limb. This world can kill you in 100 ways if you're not used to it. But don't worry, we don't expect you to eat our food. Just company is fine. As the survey team cautiously took seats, other humans brought out containers of substances that appeared to be prepared food items. The smells that penetrated even their filtered air supply were complex and unfamiliar. May I ask what happened to your limb? Tejas inquired of Jack, his scientific mind seeking to understand how these beings coped with injury in such a hostile environment. Jack's expression changed to what might be reminiscence. Swamp Cat got me about 15 years back. I was checking traps down in the bayou and stepped right into its territory. My own fault. Wasn't paying proper attention. And you survived such an attack? Marin asked in amazement. Jack made the amusement sound again. Sure did. Sarah here patched me up. He gestured to an older female human nearby. She's our healer. used wild honey and some herbs to keep the rot away, and I was back on my feet, well, foot, in a month or so. Tejas exchanged glances with Marin. Treatment of such an injury with only local biological materials on a Class 14 world should have been impossible. The microbial load alone would have caused lethal infection. A younger human approached, carrying what appeared to be a small container of liquid. The child, Tejas assumed it was a juvenile based on size, showed no fear of the strange visitors, its face displaying open curiosity. My grandson, Jack explained with obvious pride, just turned 10 cycles. Already can hunt and fish better than most adults. The child held out the container toward Jalil, who was closest. I made you pine tea, the translator rendered. It helps with space sickness. Jalil looked to Tejas for guidance, clearly touched by the gesture, but aware of safety protocols. Thank you for your kindness, Tejas addressed the child. Unfortunately, our biology is very different from yours, and we must remain in our protective gear. The child appeared briefly disappointed, but nodded in understanding. That's okay. Dad says the air here would probably melt your lungs anyway if you're not born to it. The casual way this juvenile discussed lethal atmospheric effects was perhaps the most shocking thing Tejas had encountered yet. These humans not only survived in this death environment, they understood its dangers and accepted them as normal. As the evening progressed, the survey team observed and documented the human settlement with growing amazement. Their technology was surprisingly primitive. They used combustion for heating and cooking, manual labor for most tasks, and had only basic electricity generation through what appeared to be solar collection and water power. Yet these seemingly primitive beings had adapted every aspect of their existence to thrive in conditions that should, by all scientific understanding, be unsurvivable. How many of you live here? Nor asked Tom as they observed the community gathering. In this settlement? About 50. But there are other communities scattered across the continent. Maybe 5,000 humans total in this region. And you maintain contact with these other settlements? Jalil inquired, her technological interest piqued. Tom nodded. We have radio, and some places have more advanced tech that survived from before. Every season we have a gathering of all communities to trade goods and stories. It's our way of staying connected. Before, Tejas caught the reference. Before what? A silence fell among the humans nearby, and expressions changed to what Tejas interpreted as solemnity. Before the Great Collapse, Jack finally answered. When humanity stretched across the stars, much like your alliance probably does now. That was many generations ago. This new information was staggering. These weren't simply indigenous beings who had somehow evolved to survive on a death world. They were the descendants of a fallen spacefaring civilization who had adapted to survive on their home world without the protection of advanced technology. Our history tells that our ancestors once had ships that could cross between stars, continued Jack. Great cities that stretched to the clouds. Machines that could heal any wound and grow food without soil. But they grew disconnected from Earth, from what makes us human. When the systems failed, most couldn't survive without their machines. But your ancestors did, nor observed softly. Jack nodded, his weathered face solemn. Those who remembered the old ways. Those who still knew how to live with the land, not just on it. They taught their children, and their children taught us. As night fell on the death world, Tejas found himself reevaluating everything he thought he knew about adaptation, survival, and the resilience of life. According to all scientific principles, humanity should not exist. Yet here they were, not merely surviving, but forming communities, creating culture, and maintaining historical knowledge through generations of isolation. Later, as the team returned to their shuttle to report their findings to the Star Seeker, Tejas made a decision that would change Galactic Alliance classification protocols forever. Based on comprehensive analysis, he recorded in his official log, I am reclassifying this planet from Class 12 to Class 15 Death World, the highest classification recorded. Furthermore, I am recommending immediate recognition of humanity as the most environmentally adaptive species currently known to the Alliance. As the team settled in for the night, setting up monitoring equipment around their shuttle. Tejas couldn't help but look toward the human settlement visible in the distance. By all rights, they shouldn't exist. And yet, their very existence challenged everything he thought he knew about life in the galaxy. Whatever tomorrow would bring, one thing was certain. The discovery of humanity would send shockwaves through the scientific community of the Alliance. Tejas only hoped they would approach these remarkable beings with the humility their survival deserved. Dawn broke over the settlement with startling speed, the transition from darkness to full daylight taking place in less than 20 minutes. Tejas, who had remained awake analyzing data throughout the night cycle, noted this as yet another extreme characteristic of the planet. The team emerged from their shuttle to find several humans already active, engaged in what appeared to be daily survival tasks. Some tended to the cultivation plots, others prepared food, and a group of juveniles was engaged in what might be training exercises under the supervision of an adult. Their social structure is remarkably cohesive, observed Noor as she recorded the interactions. Despite the minimal technology, they display complex social hierarchies and knowledge transfer systems. Tejas nodded absently, his attention caught by a weather pattern forming on the horizon. Dark clouds were gathering with unnatural speed, and atmospheric readings showed rapidly changing pressure systems. "We may have a weather event approaching," he warned the team. "The formation rate is unlike anything I've documented before." Tom approached from the settlement, carrying what appeared to be some kind of tool. "Morning, star folks. You've got good eyes." He gestured toward the horizon. "That's a magnetic storm brewing. We've got about 3 hours before it hits." "Magnetic storm?" repeated Jalil, her technological expertise triggered by the term. "You mean an electromagnetic disturbance?" Tom nodded. "The kind that fries anything electrical if it's not properly shielded. We're preparing the storm bunker now. You might want to move your ship to the caves north of here, where you'll be stuck on Earth longer than you planned." Tejas exchanged concerned glances with his team. Their shuttle had adequate shielding for normal space conditions, but if this magnetic storm was as severe as the humans suggested, they could indeed be stranded. "Thank you for the warning," Tejas replied. "How frequently do these storms occur?" Tom shrugged. A gesture that Tejas was learning indicated casual acceptance. "Every few weeks in this season. This one looks bigger than usual, though. The animals are going to ground earlier than normal." Kraz, ever vigilant, had been scanning the forest edge. The wildlife activity has indeed changed pattern in the last hour. Significantly fewer large life forms detected near the perimeter. This phenomenon, animals predicting and responding to danger before it was instrumentally obvious, was yet another adaptation that Tejas found fascinating. It suggested an environmental sensitivity that went beyond conventional scientific understanding. "I need to return to the Star Seeker and report our findings," Tejas decided. "The rest of you continue observations until the storm approaches critical threshold, then secure the shuttle in the location Tom suggested. I can show your people the caves," offered a new human who had joined them. This one was female, with darker skin and complex patterns carved into her equipment. "I'm Mara, the settlement's navigator." "Navigator?" Jalil perked up, her crest extending slightly in interest. "You navigate without advanced technology?" Mara made the human amusement expression. "The stars don't need batteries to shine. Neither does knowledge need machines to exist." This philosophical response was unexpected from what the Alliance would consider a primitive society. Tejas was continually having to revise his assessment of human cognitive and cultural development. Marin, Noor, and Jalil will continue observation here, Tejas decided. Kraz, you'll accompany me back to the Star Seeker for the debrief, then return to escort the team to these caves if necessary. As Tejas prepared for departure, Jack approached, moving deliberately with his prosthetic limb. "Dr. Starman," he called, the translator struggling slightly with the informal address. "A word before you go." Tejas paused, respectfully giving the elder his attention. "Of course, Elder Jack. Just Jack is fine," the human said with his facial expression of amusement. "I wanted to ask, what will your people do now that you've found us?" The question was direct and insightful. Tejas considered his response carefully. The Alliance protocols are clear regarding contact with previously unknown intelligent species. We observe, document, and establish diplomatic relations if the species is willing. No interference with development or governance. Jack nodded slowly, his weathered face thoughtful. Good intentions, then. But I've lived long enough to know there's often a gap between policy and practice, especially when one group has ships that cross the stars and the other plants tubers in the dirt. The Elder's perception surprised Tejas. Despite their technological limitations, these humans possessed an acute understanding of power dynamics and potential exploitation. I can only speak for the scientific mission, Tejas admitted, but I will ensure that my report emphasizes that despite appearances, humanity is not a primitive species to be uplifted or guided. You are the survivors of a civilization that reached the stars and then adapted to survive its fall. That deserves respect, not intervention. Jack studied him with eyes that seemed to see beyond Teyas's alien features. Finally, he extended a hand, a gesture Tejas had observed among the humans, apparently denoting agreement or farewell. Cautiously, Tejas extended his own three-digit appendage. Jack grasped it firmly through the environmental suit's field barrier. Good journey, Dr. Venn. Try not to die on your way to your ship. The wildlife gets restless before a storm. With that peculiar mixture of hospitality and warning that seemed characteristic of humans, Jack turned and made his way back to the settlement. Tejas and Kraz departed shortly after, taking the shuttle on a brief atmospheric flight back to the orbital rendezvous point. Throughout the journey, Tejas found himself struggling to organize his thoughts on what they had discovered. This was no ordinary first contact. It was a fundamental challenge to the Alliance's understanding of adaptability, civilization, and perhaps even the definition of intelligence itself. When they arrived at the Star Seeker, Captain Zorvu was waiting in the docking bay, his crystalline features set in an expression of concern. Dr. Van, our sensors have detected an unusual electromagnetic disturbance forming in the planet's atmosphere. It's unlike anything in our database. The indigenous population warned us about it, Tejas explained as they walked briskly toward the bridge. They call it a magnetic storm and apparently have adapted to survive regular occurrences. Zorvu's golden eyes flickered with surprise. Indigenous population? You found intelligent life on a Class 12 Deathworld. Class 15, Tejas corrected automatically. I've upgraded the classification based on our observations. And yes, Captain, we've discovered a species called humans who not only survive on this world, but have developed a sophisticated cultural and knowledge system despite minimal technology. By the time they reached the bridge, most of the senior crew had gathered to hear Teyas's report. The news of intelligent life on such an extreme world had spread quickly through the ship. Show us, requested Zorvu, activating the main holographic display. Tejas uploaded his observation data, and the three-dimensional images of the human settlement, its inhabitants, and their activities appeared in the center of the bridge. There were murmurs of astonishment from the crew. These beings survive on a Class 15 death world without environmental protection? Asked Lyra, her translucent features showing clear disbelief. Not only survive, thrive, corrected Tejas. They have adapted to every extreme condition the planet presents. The microbial load, the radiation, the atmospheric volatility, the predatory wildlife, even these electromagnetic disturbances. That should be biologically impossible, stated the ship's medical officer, a Valerian named Seft. His multiple sensory stalks were all focused intently on the images. No single species could develop adaptations to so many different environmental threats simultaneously. And yet, the evidence is conclusive, replied Tejas. Furthermore, based on their own historical accounts, these humans once possessed spacefaring technology comparable to our own, but experienced some kind of civilization collapse. The current population consists of descendants who maintained or redeveloped survival skills suited to their world. Captain Zorvu considered this information gravely. This changes the nature of our mission from simple planetary classification to first contact protocol. We should. He was interrupted by an urgent alert from the ship's systems. On the view screen, a massive energy disturbance could be seen forming in the planet's upper atmosphere. The storm is accelerating beyond predicted parameters, reported Lyra, her fingers dancing across the controls. Electromagnetic interference increasing exponentially. Can we maintain communication with the surface team? Asked Tejas, suddenly concerned for his colleagues. Negative, Lyra replied after attempting to establish contact. The interference is blocking all standard frequencies. Tejas felt a surge of what humans might call worry. His team was now isolated on the surface of the most dangerous planet ever classified, with only the guidance of the indigenous humans to rely on. Captain, request permission to return to the surface, he said firmly. My team needs. Denied, Dr. Vin, interrupted Zorvu. The shuttle wouldn't survive the atmospheric conditions now. We need to move the Starseeker to a higher orbit until this disturbance passes. As if to emphasize the captain's point, the ship shuddered slightly as the outer edge of the storm reached their position. Shields holding at 87%, reported the tactical officer. But they're dropping steadily. This storm is generating interference patterns our systems weren't designed to handle. Take us out of range, ordered Zorvu. Standard orbital distance plus 50,000 kilometers. As the Starseeker moved away from the planet, Tejas watched the swirling energy patterns with scientific fascination and personal concern. How were his colleagues faring below? And how did the humans, with their seemingly primitive technology, survive such regular catastrophic events? For the first time in his distinguished career, Tejas was faced with a phenomenon that defied his understanding. Not just the planet's extreme conditions, but the beings who had made it their home. They shouldn't exist, he murmured to himself as the planet grew smaller on the view screen. But they do, and that changes everything. On the surface, the remaining survey team members were experiencing the approaching storm firsthand. Under Mara's guidance, they had relocated to the cave system she had mentioned, a vast network of underground chambers that apparently served as the settlement's shelter during extreme weather events. These formations appear natural, but show signs of deliberate modification, observed Jalil as they entered the main chamber. Her technological interest was piqued by the simple but effective adaptations the humans had made. Drainage channels cut into the stone floor, ventilation shafts reinforced with local materials, storage areas elevated above potential flood levels. Our ancestors found these caves generations ago, explained Mara as she lit what appeared to be oil lamps around the perimeter. Each generation has improved them a little. The work is never finished. The chamber was already half full of humans, families with their essential belongings, quietly organizing themselves in what was clearly a well-rehearsed routine. Children helped elders, food supplies were distributed, and some adults performed checks on the cave structure. Their disaster response is remarkably organized, Nur commented quietly to Marin. Despite the lack of technology, they function with efficiency that rivals Alliance emergency protocols. Marin nodded, still recording biological readings on the humans. Their physiological responses show elevated but controlled stress levels. They're afraid, yet functional, a difficult evolutionary balance to achieve. A young human female approached them, carrying a container of liquid. This one appeared to be in early adulthood, with intricate patterns woven into her hair. You'll want to turn off any devices that aren't shielded, she advised through the translator. The storm fries anything electrical. We learned that lesson the hard way. Jalil looked concerned. Our equipment has standard Alliance shielding, but if this storm is as powerful as you suggest, better safe than sorry, the young woman replied with a shrug. I'm Danny, by the way. I'm studying the storms, trying to predict them better. You're a scientist? Jalil asked with interest. Danny made the human expression of amusement. I observe record patterns and test theories. Isn't that what scientists do, regardless of their tools? Before Jalil could respond, a low rumble shook the cave, sending dust filtering down from the ceiling. The sound outside intensified, a howling wind mixed with something that resembled electrical discharge. "Here it comes," announced Jack, who had positioned himself near the cave entrance. "Everyone to your stations." The humans moved with practiced coordination, some securing the entrance with reinforced barriers, others checking on the youngest and oldest members of their community, still others monitoring what appeared to be primitive but effective measuring devices placed throughout the cave. "Stay with me," Mara instructed the survey team. First time through a magnetic storm can be disorienting for off-worlders. As if on cue, the team's instruments emitted warning alerts before failing completely, their screens going dark as powerful electromagnetic pulses penetrated even their advanced shielding. "Our equipment," Marin exclaimed in alarm. "Don't worry," Danny reassured her. "After the storm passes, most tech reboots if it was properly powered down. That's why we warned you." The storm's fury increased, the sound becoming almost painful even through the team's protective helmets. The cave entrance, now sealed with the barriers, still leaked occasional flashes of unnatural light, blue, white, and searing. "This is incredible," whispered Noor, her empathic tendrils retracting protectively. "The energy readings before our instruments failed were beyond anything documented in Alliance records." A child nearby began to cry, frightened by a particularly loud thunderclap. Immediately, an elder human gathered the child close, singing a soft melody that was somehow audible even over the storm's rage. "They comfort each other," Noor observed. "Despite the frequency of these events, they still acknowledge fear as natural and address it collectively." "Of course," replied Mara, overhearing. "That's how we survive. Not by being fearless, but by facing fear together." The storm raged for what the team's chronometers, had they been functioning, would have measured as approximately 3 standard hours. Throughout, the humans maintained their organized calm, dealing with minor emergencies as they arose. A small leak in one section of the cave, an elderly member experiencing respiratory distress, a support beam that cracked under strain. Finally, the fury began to subside. The howling diminished, the flashes of light became less frequent, and the vibrations in the cave floor gradually ceased. Jack approached the entrance barriers and consulted with several other adults before making a decision. "First team, prepare for surface check," he announced. For humans, equipped with what appeared to be protective coverings and simple tools, removed a section of the barrier and cautiously exited the cave. The survey team watched with professional interest as the humans performed a methodical assessment of outside conditions before one returned to the entrance. "All clear," the scout reported. "Standard post-storm conditions. Some downed trees near the south field. 2 huts damaged. No casualties among the animals we've found." A collective sense of relief spread through the gathered humans. With the same organized efficiency they had displayed during the crisis, they now began preparing to return to their settlement. "Wait," Jaleel requested as the team's equipment slowly reactivated. "You're going back outside already? Shouldn't you wait longer to ensure the danger has completely passed?" Tom, who had been helping an elderly human gather her belongings, turned to address the technologist. "The storm's done. What comes next is the opportunity." "Opportunity?" asked Marin. "After a storm like this, unique resources become available," explained Danny enthusiastically. "Certain fungi only bloom in the aftermath of magnetic disruption. Some mineral deposits are exposed by the electrical discharges, and many small animals are disoriented, making hunting easier." Jack nodded in agreement. "On Earth, destruction and creation walk hand in hand. What the storm breaks, we rebuild. What it reveals, we harvest. That's the rhythm of life here." As the survey team followed the humans back toward their settlement, they witnessed firsthand this philosophy in action. The landscape had indeed been transformed by the storm's fury. Trees uprooted, waterways redirected, strange scorch patterns marking the ground where lightning had struck. Yet the humans moved through this altered environment with confidence, already identifying opportunities amid the destruction. Children collected unusual stones exposed by the disturbed soil. Adults noted changes in the landscape that might affect future hunting or planting. Some gathered plants that appear to have been activated by the storm's energy, their luminescent properties now visible. Their adaptability extends beyond mere survival, nor observed quietly to her colleagues. They've integrated the planet's extreme cycles into their culture and economy. They don't just endure the storms. They've made them part of their resource management system. The settlement itself had suffered damage, as the scout had reported. Two of the smaller structures had partially collapsed, and debris was scattered throughout the central area. Without prompting, the humans organized into repair teams, salvaging materials and beginning reconstruction immediately. Your shuttle should be safe in the caves, Mara informed the team as they reached the settlement. But I'd wait at least until tomorrow before trying to use it. Sometimes there are aftershocks, smaller electromagnetic pulses that follow the main storm. Thank you for your guidance, Noor replied sincerely. Your knowledge has been invaluable to us. As the day progressed, the survey team's equipment gradually returned to full functionality. Marin and Jalil conducted thorough diagnostics, while Noor continued observing the human recovery efforts. I've re-established communication with the Star Seeker, Jalil announced eventually. They've returned to standard orbit now that the storm has passed. Dr. Van is requesting a status report. Inform him that we're safe and continuing observations, Noor decided. Also request permission to remain on the surface for an additional cycle. There's so much more to learn about how these humans have adapted. As Jalil relayed the message, Marin approached Noor with unusual excitement in her typically reserved demeanor. You need to see this, the biologist said, displaying readings on her now functional instruments. I've been analyzing biological samples from before and after the storm, and the results are revolutionary. The data showed that some of the local organisms, plants, insects, even soil bacteria, had not merely survived the electromagnetic disturbance, but had actively incorporated the energy into their biological processes. Some showed altered growth patterns, others displayed new chemical properties, and a few had actually reproduced at accelerated rates in response to the stress. It's as if the entire ecosystem has evolved to utilize what should be a devastating event, Marin explained. And the humans have, in turn, adapted to exploit these secondary adaptations. It's a cascade of evolutionary responses unlike anything in our records. This challenges fundamental alliance assumptions about habitability, Noor realized. We've been categorizing death worlds based on what would kill most species, without considering that evolution might take entirely different paths under extreme selective pressure. Their discussion was interrupted by Jack, who approached with a small group of humans. Among them was a woman of middle years, carrying what appeared to be a container of prepared food. Thought you folks might want to join our after-storm meal, Jack invited. Sarah here has made her famous gumbo. It's tradition after we weather a big one together. The woman, Sarah, held up the container. Steam rose from it, carrying complex aromas that penetrated even the team's filtered air supply. It's got everything good that grows in the swamp, she explained. Plus a special mushroom that only comes up after the magnetic storms. Clears the mind and strengthens the body. Once again, the team found themselves in the diplomatically awkward position of being offered sustenance they couldn't safely consume. But before they could formulate a polite refusal, Jack surprised them. I know you can't eat it with those suits on, he said with understanding. But Sarah wanted to extend the invitation anyway. It's our way of saying you're welcome among us, even if you can't share our table directly. The simple dignity of this gesture, recognizing the aliens' limitations while still including them in an important cultural ritual, touched the team deeply. Noor, with her empathic abilities, could sense the genuine warmth behind the offer. We are honored by your hospitality, she replied formally. While we cannot join in the consumption, we would be privileged to join the gathering, if permitted. Jack's weathered face creased in a smile. Of course, community is about more than just eating together. It's about being present for each other. The after-storm meal proved to be a complex social event that went far beyond simple nutrition. The entire settlement gathered in the central area, where makeshift tables had been constructed from materials salvaged after the storm. The food was distributed according to subtle but clearly defined social protocols, with elders served first, followed by children, then working adults. Throughout the meal, individuals stood to share stories, some apparently relating to past storms and survival, others seeming to be traditional narratives passed through generations. The translator struggled with some of the more poetic or metaphorical content, but the emotional impact was clear even without perfect comprehension. They're reinforcing their shared identity, Noor explained to her colleagues as they observed. These stories serve multiple functions: entertainment, education, historical record, and psychological processing of trauma. It's an elegant solution to maintaining social cohesion under constant environmental stress. As the gathering continued, Danny approached the team again, her expression eager. "I wanted to show you something," she said, holding out what appeared to be a bound collection of hand-processed materials, what an Alliance historian might recognize as a primitive book. "These are my storm records," she explained, opening the book to reveal detailed hand-drawn charts, diagrams, and notes. 5 years of observations and patterns. "I think I'm starting to understand the cycle better." Jalil examined the records with professional interest, recognizing despite the primitive medium that this was serious scientific documentation. "You've been measuring the electromagnetic intensities and correlating them with seasonal patterns," she observed, impressed. Danny nodded enthusiastically. "And with plant growth cycles, animal migrations, even human birth rates. Everything on Earth is connected to these storms. I think our ancestors understood this better than we do now. There are old stories that suggest they could even predict the big ones months in advance." This conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the edge of the gathering. A group of humans had returned from the forest, carrying something between them. As they approached, the survey team could see it was another human, a young male, apparently injured. Daniel went to check the eastern traps. One of the carriers explained hurriedly as Sarah rushed forward. "Got caught in a mudslide from a storm. His leg's badly broken, and he's lost blood." The injured human was carefully placed on a prepared surface. His lower limb was indeed severely damaged, the bone visibly misaligned beneath the skin, the tissue already discolored and swelling rapidly. In an Alliance settlement, such an injury would warrant immediate medical technology: bone regenerators, tissue stimulators, pain management systems. Here, Sarah simply rolled up her sleeves and began issuing calm instructions to those around her. "Boil water with the red bark. Maya, get my sewing kit. Tom, I need 2 straight branches for splinting. Someone prepare the white moss, the fresh kind, not the dried." The survey team watched in professional fascination as the humans executed what was clearly a well-established emergency medical protocol, despite their technological limitations. Sarah cleaned the wound with various plant-derived solutions, manually realigned the broken bone with surprising anatomical precision, applied what appeared to be antimicrobial substances from local sources, and finally immobilized the limb with an effective splint. Throughout the procedure, the injured human remained conscious, gripping a piece of leather between his teeth, his pain evident but controlled. Others held him steady and offered encouragement. "No anesthetic," Marin noted quietly to her colleagues. "They're managing a compound fracture with only manual techniques and botanical preparations on a planet with the highest microbial load we've ever recorded. And he'll survive," added Noor, her empathic sense detecting the controlled confidence among the humans. "They've done this before, successfully." When the procedure was complete, the injured human was given liquids containing various infusions, then carefully transported to one of the intact structures for recovery. The gathering resumed, though with a slightly more subdued atmosphere. "This happens after every storm," Jack explained, noticing the team's interest. "Someone always gets hurt, sometimes worse than Daniel. But we heal, we adapt, we continue. You could have technology to prevent such injuries," Jalil pointed out. "Even without spacefaring capabilities, basic medical equipment would." "We had that once," interrupted Jack, his expression growing serious. Our ancestors had machines that could heal any wound, regrow any limb, cure any disease. And when those machines failed, they had forgotten how to splint a broken bone or which plants fight infection. They died by the billions, not because they couldn't have survived, but because they'd forgotten how. The elder looked toward the structure where Daniel was recovering. We choose to remember the old ways, even when we could try to rebuild the machines. Because the old ways have never failed us. They cannot fail, so long as Earth provides and we remember. This philosophy, prioritizing reliable, locally sourced solutions over potentially more effective, but also more vulnerable technological ones, challenged the Alliance's fundamental approach to civilization development. For the Galactic Alliance, progress was measured in technological advancement. Stepping backward was never considered a viable adaptation. Yet here was a society that had deliberately chosen a different path, one that emphasized resilience over efficiency, sustainability over innovation. And in the extreme environment of this Class 15 Deathworld, their approach had succeeded where the most advanced technology had ultimately failed. As night fell in the settlement once more, the survey team retreated to discuss their observations and prepare their report for Dr. Venn. The Starseeker had confirmed it would send a shuttle at dawn to retrieve them, now that the electromagnetic disturbance had fully subsided. We need to completely revise the Alliance classification system, Marin concluded after reviewing her biological data. It's based on an assumption that extreme conditions prevent advanced life from developing, when in fact they may simply direct evolution along different paths. Not just biological evolution, added North thoughtfully. Cultural evolution as well. These humans have developed social structures and knowledge systems specifically adapted to their environment. Their culture isn't primitive compared to the Alliance. It's highly specialized for survival under conditions we've never had to face. Jalil nodded in agreement. Their technology follows the same principle. It appears simple because it prioritizes different values: reliability over efficiency, repairability over complexity. In many ways, it's more advanced than ours, if advancement is measured by suitability to purpose rather than raw capability. As they finalized their observations, a small group of humans approached their position, led by Jack. The elder carried what appeared to be a small container made of local materials. "We brought you a parting gift," he announced, "since you'll be leaving tomorrow." "How did you know we're departing?" asked Noor, surprised. Jack's face creased in his now familiar expression of amusement. "Your ship has been visible in our sky since the storm cleared. And if I had a team on a death world, I want them back as soon as possible, too." He held out the container. Inside was a collection of small objects, seeds, dried plants, a vial of liquid, and what appeared to be a handcrafted representation of Earth made from local materials. "Just a few things to remember us by," Jack explained, "and maybe to study, if that's what you folks do." Danny included some of her notes on the storms. Sarah put in seeds from her healing plants. The kids made the little Earth model. The simple generosity of the gift, offering their knowledge and pieces of their world to the strangers who had arrived unannounced in their midst, was profoundly moving to the survey team. "Thank you," Noor replied, her voice containing genuine emotion that transcended the translator's mechanical rendering. "We will treasure these gifts and the knowledge they represent." Jack nodded, his expression turning more serious. "Just one thing we ask in return." "What is that?" inquired Marin. "Remember that we belong here," the elders said simply. "Whatever your people decide about Earth, remember that this is our home, not because it's comfortable or safe, but because it made us who we are. We don't need to be rescued from it." With those words, Jack and the other humans bid the team good night and returned to their settlement, leaving the aliens to contemplate the profound wisdom contained in the elders' simple request. The return shuttle from the Starseeker arrived precisely at dawn, touching down in the clearing near the human settlement. Dr. Tejas Van was among the first to disembark, his concern for his team evident in his rapid movement despite the planet's slightly higher gravity. "Your status reports were received, but incomplete due to ongoing interference," he informed Noor, Marin, and Jalil as they prepared to board. "The captain has been extremely concerned about your safety during the electromagnetic event. We were in no danger, Nor assured him. The humans guided us to shelter and share their knowledge of storm survival. Without their assistance, the outcome might have been different, but they treated us as honored guests rather than intruders. Tejas absorbed this information with thoughtful consideration. During his return to the Starseeker, he had reviewed all available data on planetary classification and evolutionary theory, searching for precedents or explanations for what they had discovered on Earth. He had found none. As the team loaded their equipment and the gifts from the humans onto the shuttle, a delegation from the settlement approached. Jack led the group, using his prosthetic limb with practiced skill over the uneven ground. Behind him came Tom, Sarah, Danny, and several others the team had interacted with during their stay. "Came to see you off properly," Jack announced. "It's not every day we get visitors from beyond Earth." Tejas stepped forward, having prepared a formal farewell. "On behalf of the Galactic Alliance, I extend gratitude for your hospitality and assistance to our survey team. Your planet has been officially classified as a Class 15 Deathworld, the highest designation in our system. Yet you have demonstrated that such environments need not prevent the development of advanced civilization and culture." Jack nodded, seemingly unsurprised by the classification. "Been trying to tell you, Dr. Venn, it's not a death world to us. It's just home." The simple statement contained profound truth that challenged the very foundation of Alliance xenobiology. Every classification system was inherently species-centric. What constituted a death environment for one life form might be optimal for another. The Alliance Council will be most interested in establishing diplomatic relations with humanity, Tejas continued. Your unique adaptations and knowledge systems represent valuable contributions to galactic understanding. At this, Jack and the other humans exchanged glances that seemed to contain both amusement and caution. "We're happy to talk with your people," Jack replied carefully. "Exchange knowledge, share stories. But we've seen what happens when Earth folk get too entangled with advanced technology again. We'll keep to our way if it's all the same to you." "Of course," Tejas assured him, recognizing the wisdom in the elder's caution. "The Alliance enforces strict, non-interference protocols with all civilizations. Cultural autonomy is considered an absolute right." This seemed to satisfy Jack, who extended his hand in a human farewell gesture. Tejas, having observed the protocol during his previous visit, reciprocated appropriately. "Maybe next time you visit," Jack suggested with a twinkle in his eye, "you might consider taking off those fancy suits and trying some of Sarah's gumbo. Might surprise yourself with what you can adapt to." The comment, delivered with good humor, nonetheless contained a challenge that Tejas would consider deeply in the days to come. The environmental protection the survey team relied upon. Was it truly necessary, or simply an assumption based on their own biological limitations and expectations? As the shuttle prepared for departure, the humans stepped back, raising their upper limbs in what appeared to be a traditional farewell gesture. Children darted forward to place small handcrafted objects at the edge of the clearing, offerings or mementos for the departing visitors. Seated in the shuttle as it rose from Earth's surface, Tejas watched the human settlement recede, becoming a small cluster of structures amid the vast wilderness of the Death World. Yet that label, Death World, no longer seemed entirely appropriate. For humanity, this hostile environment wasn't an obstacle to overcome, but the very crucible that had forged their remarkable adaptability. When they returned to the Starseeker, Captain Zorvu assembled the senior staff to hear the complete survey report. The holographic displays in the briefing room showed images, readings, and recordings from the team's time on Earth, including documentation of the magnetic storm and its aftermath. Based on comprehensive analysis, Tejas concluded after the detailed presentation, "I am officially classifying planet Earth as a Class 15. Death World, the highest designation in Alliance taxonomy. However, I am also recommending a new subcategory be created to recognize worlds that, while lethal to most known species, are the evolutionary crucible for uniquely adapted indigenous life forms. You're suggesting a fundamental revision to the classification system that has served the Alliance for centuries," noted Captain Zorvu, his crystalline features reflecting the seriousness of the proposal. I am, confirmed Teyas without hesitation. Our encounter with humanity has revealed a significant blind spot in our scientific understanding. We have been categorizing worlds based on our own biological parameters, without sufficiently considering that what constitutes a hostile environment is entirely relative to the species in question. The captain considered this for a long moment before responding. Your findings will need to be reviewed by the Alliance Science Directorate before any such classification changes can be implemented. However, your reputation and the thorough documentation provided by your team lends significant weight to the proposal. Thank you, Captain, Teyas acknowledged. There is one additional recommendation I wish to make. Proceed. I recommend that Earth be designated as a protected biosphere, with strict limitations on Alliance presence and absolutely no colonization or resource extraction permitted. This is not primarily a scientific designation, but an ethical one. This proposal generated murmurs among the assembled officers. Protected biosphere status was rare, usually reserved for worlds with unique ecological systems that could be easily disrupted by outside contact. On what grounds do you make this recommendation? Inquired Zorvu. Humanity has developed a sustainable civilization specifically adapted to their world's extreme conditions, Teyas explained. Their cultural and biological adaptations are uniquely suited to Earth and might be irreparably damaged by excessive contact with Alliance technology or cultures. Furthermore, they have explicitly expressed their wish to maintain their current lifestyle. Even though we could offer them technologies that would make their existence less dangerous, asked the medical officer, Seft. From what I've seen in these reports, they suffer injuries and hardships that could be easily prevented. With respect, Nur interjected, they don't view their existence as something that needs to be fixed. They see their relationship with their challenging environment as integral to their identity as a species. To impose our standards of comfort or safety would be a form of cultural imperialism. Captain Zorvu absorbed these perspectives thoughtfully. I will include your recommendations in my report to Alliance Command. The final decision regarding Earth's status will rest with the Diplomatic Council, but your insights will carry significant influence. As the meeting concluded, Teyas found himself drawn back to the observation deck, where Earth was still visible as a small blue sphere against the vastness of space. From this distance, there was no visible evidence of the extreme conditions that had earned it the highest danger classification in Alliance records. It appeared peaceful, even inviting. Nor joined him at the viewport. Her empathic tendrils relaxed in what Teyas had come to recognize as a contemplative state. I keep thinking about something Jack said, she commented after a moment of shared silence. About how Earth isn't a death world to them. It's just home. Teyas nodded. It challenges everything I thought I understood about adaptation and survival. By all scientific metrics, humanity should not exist. Yet not only do they exist, they've created a civilization that embraces the very conditions we consider hostile. Perhaps that's the most important discovery we've made, suggested Noor. Not just that humanity has survived on a Class 15 world, but that they've found a way to belong there. They don't merely endure their environment. They celebrate it, incorporate it into their identity, find meaning in their relationship with it. The observation resonated deeply with Teyas. Throughout his career, he had categorized worlds based on their hostility, measuring danger, cataloging hazards, determining what made a planet unsuitable for life. Yet humanity had revealed the limitation of that perspective. There are places that are feared because they kill life, he mused, watching Earth slowly rotate below them, and places that are feared because life there cannot be killed. I believe Earth falls into the latter category. As the Starseeker prepared to depart Earth's system, Teyas finalized his official report for the Alliance archives. The last entry read, in conclusion, the discovery of humanity on Earth, a Class 15 death world, represents not merely a scientific curiosity, but a profound philosophical challenge to Alliance understanding of adaptation, civilization, and the relationship between intelligent species and their environments. These beings have not conquered their hostile world, nor have they been conquered by it. Instead, they have achieved something far more remarkable. They have become so perfectly adapted to conditions we consider lethal that they experience them as normal, even beneficial. Earth is not a death world to humanity. It is the crucible that forged them, the challenge that defined them, and the home that sustains them. In their unique adaptation lies a powerful lesson for the Alliance. That true resilience comes not from escaping hostile conditions, but from embracing them as the very essence of existence. As the Starseeker engaged its interstellar drive and departed Earth's system, Tejas knew that the ripples from their discovery would spread throughout the Alliance for generations to come. Humanity, with their extraordinary capacity to thrive in conditions that would kill most known species, had fundamentally changed how the galactic community would understand adaptation, survival, and the very definition of what constituted a habitable world. And on Earth, life continued as it had for generations. Humans planting their crops, hunting in their forests, weathering their storms, and telling stories under their stars, blissfully unconcerned with their newly confirmed status as the most environmentally adaptive species in the known galaxy.